use that privilege to support the struggles of non-Christian people throughout the world for land, for autonomy, for independence, for reparations, and for justice. Also, to notice the operation of Christian hegemony in your everyday life, how it plays out in your life, in your family, in your relationships, and to be able to point out instances of Christian privilege and discrimination and abuse towards people who are not Christian, to be able to name it and interrupt it. Right? And that means using a Christian hegemony lens. In other words, understanding that Christian hegemony is always operating. Just like racism is always at play, sexism is always in play. If you're in a situation, in a building, in an organization, anywhere you are, there's some Christian hegemony going on. And so the question is not whether it's going on, the question is what does it look like here? And that sharpens our ability to actually notice it and point it out and interrupt it. And one of the ways to do this work is to learn how to raise these issues with other Christians. How do you talk about it? What kind of vocabulary, what kind of approaches, strategies, how do we share the learning about how to talk about this in the community with people? Also, how to challenge the organizational and institutional policies which perpetuate or perpetrate Christian hegemony. In other words, when we're in an organization, and many of us are all in various ways, how do we identify the Christian hegemony of its personnel policies or its hiring policies or the way its relationship to the community? These are all places to begin to notice how that operates and to get together with others and challenge that in terms of how it plays out. And that means that we have to notice how Christian hegemonic values, beliefs, practices interact with systems of race and class and gender so that we can see the intersections, so that we don't get confused by that. Another area of activism is by not supporting public policies that rely on Christian values which blame, punish, criminalize, or exploit individual behavior or conditions such as being poor, being out of work, using drugs, prostitution, needing health care, needing assistance, all those kinds of things. In other words, not colluding with the system of crime and punishment that is based upon Christian values and the punishment of sinners and the rewarding of good behavior. Just a few more suggestions. One is around challenging public exhibitions of Christianity, because that's ways that Christians claim public space and exclude everyone else. And so it's really important that that be challenged in terms of building some kind of religiously plural society, culturally plural. Another is to respect other people's sacred places, rituals, and cultures. The sacred space, particularly of Native Americans, is continually under attack. Cemeteries are continually paved over. Sacred places are desecrated and mined and destroyed. And people's rituals and practices are constantly appropriated and exploited in our society. And so interrupting and intervening in that is really important. It's important to support the First Amendment separation of church and state. And notice that phrase, church and state. There's problems with the First Amendment, but it is a tool for setting some limits sometimes on some of the things that we find most exploitative. Another area is to challenge missionary programs. Often we get resigned to them. We just assume that they're going to show up on our doorstep, or they're going to go into our communities, or they're going to be sent and paid for overseas. But we need to challenge that ongoing attempt to spread the word around the world, because it's incredibly destructive to indigenous cultures and to our own communities. We need to challenge attempts to justify U.S. imperialism by appeals to the special, superior, or righteous role that the U.S. should play as a Christian, civilized, democratic, free market, or human rights-based society. Those are all forms of Christian hegemony that we export to other people, usually in terms of arms and war and militarism, justified by our having the truth, our having the way, our being the ones that are righteous. Other more personal things is to examine the ways that we may have internalized feelings of superiority and negative judgment of others, especially those from marginalized and non-Christian groups. And to examine the ways we may have internalized those judgments about ourselves. And to examine the ways we may have cut ourselves off from our bodies, our natural expressions of our sexuality or spirituality, and connections to the natural world. And another area to look at is how do we avoid excusing hurtful behavior and policies because of the good intent of the perpetrators. I didn't mean it. I didn't intend to hurt you. I intended to help. We need to be looking at the impact of behaviors and policies, not the intentions of the people who are carrying those out. And we need to look for the complexity in situations and people and avoid that either-or, dualism, cosmic battle, good-evil kind of framework. That's something that we can challenge in ourselves, in our thinking and vocabulary, but also in the things we see around us. And finally, don't assume that other people you meet are Christian or should be.